Welcome back to the Accomplishment Project. Today's episode format is an expert topic episode featuring one of my closest friends and business partner, Gary Ware. Gary's the founder of Breakthrough Play. He's the author of Playful Rebellion and a facilitator who spent more than 20 years helping teams unlock creativity and collaboration through play and improv. So in this episode, we're talking about a mindset tool that has really been a game changer for both of our careers, and that's curiosity. We're going to explore how curiosity helps you overcome obstacles in your accomplishment journey and how to reframe anxiety and overwhelm into possibility. We talk about all these amazing stories from Gary's journey, my journey, insights from our own friendship, and in typical April and Gary fashion, we end with a game involving curious questions that brought out some pretty fun answers. So buckle your seatbelts, get curious, and let's dive in. All right, so I want to start with a little story. Let's go back to 2016 when we first met. And I want to hear your version of the story because it's been almost 10 years now and I have a vision of how it went down, but I want to hear your version.
So it was 2016, and I remember I used to be part of this Facebook group that was all about folks in the city of Encinitas, and Encinitas is considered like the high vibe sort of place of San Diego County. Your old coach posted a promotion for an event that you were going to be doing. I don't remember what it was called, but I remember it got my attention, and it was all about play. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm all about play. And someone's doing something in San Diego about play. I'm like all about it. So I clicked it, and I saw that it was happening around the time when I was going to be in Scottsdale, Arizona for this personal development thing that I always go to. And I was bummed. And so I immediately went over and found you on LinkedIn, and I sent a message, just saying, hey, wow, this looks really awesome. These are like the things that I do as well. And, sorry, I can't make it. So that was my message to you, just looking to get connected with other folks, because around this time, like I didn't know a lot of folks that were in that sort of playful like space. And yeah, I was just looking to network and connect. And then at one point, like, yeah, you connected back. And this is the funny thing is we eventually, and this is really dating everything, we got on a call to chat, and it was on Skype. And that was our first interaction. So I basically slid into the DMs and I was like, hey, you're pretty cool. And there we go.
And we have been inseparable since, even though we live in two separate places.
Right? Exactly.
So this is so funny to me because this workshop that Gary is talking about was in San Diego area. I knew no one. I mean, I only knew maybe less than 5 people in the San Diego area. So I went into this thinking, why am I doing this in a place that I don't know? Nobody's going to come. I don't even know how to promote, where to promote. So the fact that this got to Gary, and I don't even know if I said anything about play.
I know, right? Like now that I think about it, I was like, I don't even know do you know what the topic was? Do you know anything about like the
So the
title and stuff
title
like
of
that?
the workshop was, get ready because it's long.
That's what she said. He said. Anyways, sorry.
This is our relationship, by the way. So how to, oh my gosh, how to do the things you love without sacrificing your success. Something like that. So it's a very, very long title to a workshop. And somehow Gary goes, bing, play. And
I know, right? Oh my.
and then decided to slide into my DMs. And so from my side of things, when I got the message, I was like, wow, that is so cool, because I was not thinking that I was doing anything special. I had no clue if people felt like they could resonate with me. And yet I get this message in my LinkedIn DMs, which I don't even know how much I was on LinkedIn at the time.
Let me read it to you. I found the message.
Oh, good,
Let me
good,
let
good,
me read it. So this
good.
was March 17th of 2016. And I said, "Hey April, just wanted to send you a quick note and say thanks for connecting. I really love all that you're doing at the Cheerful Mind. I've started to do work helping people integrate play into their lives, and I appreciate anyone who's trying to get people to have more fun in their life." So that was
Interesting.
the intro to how we got connected.
I love that you still have that because I've deleted all of my messages on LinkedIn. And I think I was trying to go back and see if I could find it and I couldn't. But this is a whole reason that I wanted to share the story because I feel like there was something about the way that you are so curious that now has fast forward 10 years, we talk, I don't know, not every single day, but almost
A lot,
a
yeah.
few times a week. We have a standing meeting every week to talk about all things accountability, success circle, and life and kids and all of the things. And I feel like my work is so much more meaningful with you in it. And if you would have not been so curious, I don't know where I'd be. I don't know what my life would look like right now.
I
So,
know, right? Like same. And thinking like, all right, if we didn't like have that chance sort of meeting and like the stars were aligned and all that other stuff, like yeah, yeah, it's so crazy. Yeah, I had to think about that. So I guess it was meant to be.
yeah. So I approached Gary for this second episode. I could not have any other person be my very first guest, but I asked him, I said, Gary, what do you want to talk about? Maybe let's talk about something that you're not used to talking about. So that was me putting my curiosity hat on and trying to figure out what we were going to talk about. So, why did you pick curiosity?
Well, if we haven't had a chance to meet, I'm all about everything play and playfulness. And for me, as far as something that I don't necessarily talk about a lot, but it's grounded, as you could see, in my personality, is curiosity. And I figured in this sort of time period, we need more curiosity. And we're going to get into like all the areas about how curiosity can really transform things and really help you get unstuck and stuff like that. And yeah, in that moment, I was like, I guess very curious about like what is something that we can talk about. And curiosity was the thing that sort of bubbled up as the sort of grand all be all thing that yeah, would be awesome to go on a deep dive with you.
So, if you're listening or you're watching, we want to talk about how we can leverage curiosity when it comes to accomplishing goals, right? Because this is what this podcast is about. It is the accomplishment project. How have people accomplished things, and what are the tools that we need to accomplish whatever it is, big or small, in our lives? And so, let's first start by just talking about curiosity as the tool for accomplishment. What are the benefits of having the tool of being curious?
Well, the big thing about curiosity is that it gets your brain going. And if we can sort of rewind the clock back when we were younger kids are curious about everything. And that is how they learn. I have a 3-year-old and I'm experiencing this every day, all the time, always. Cameron, my youngest, comes up to me with just about anything. He's like, Dada, what's this? What's this? What does this do? What does that mean? And it's curiosity. And by doing that, it gets your brain into this sort of discovery mode where creativity can take place. It gets us out of the limbic system part of the brain, the lizard brain, where we're in the fight, flight, or freeze area. And yeah, and I find it's so beneficial. But again, as adults, we have this thing called functional fixedness syndrome. I think I said it right. Whereas once we learn something, it's kind of hard for us to see it differently. So that's where the phrase "you can't teach an old dog new tricks" came from. And that, like, it was once said that once you learn something, it's like, oh, your brain, it is what it is. We can't change. And so curiosity is the thing that breaks us out of that, because it gets us in that to that state of wonder. And when we're in that state of wonder, anything can happen.
I know that you've told me in the past, it is easier for you to overcome challenges when you leverage curiosity. And so I think when we are on the accomplishment journey, we're always experiencing these hiccups and challenges along the way, right? Because no ride is smooth. There's always bumps along the road. And so we can leverage curiosity as a tool in that journey to accomplish whatever it is. But how does that curiosity show up for you? And how does it show up the same for everybody, or is it different?
So for me personally, I've conditioned myself when I'm in this sort of state of stuck where I'm like, oh man, I'm trying to achieve something and maybe the results aren't going as planned, is to start to wonder. When you ask yourself a question, you can't help but to answer it. And for me, it starts to open that realm of possibilities. Now, here's the thing, as adults, and we need to get better at this. I don't know about you, but like a lot of times, like when I'm goal planning and trying to achieve these things, I put a roadmap and these are the action items and these things I want to achieve. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. And then we hit a
Right.
brick wall. And the last thing we want is to like, oh, really have to do something else. And like, it's just exhausting, or maybe it's just me. So the thing that we need to be open to is, what if the path that we get there is not necessarily the original path that we set out?
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
being open to curiosity gives us new possibilities to achieving those things that we set out for. And not only like new possibilities, but it gives us resources that we didn't think is possible.
That's true. And to me, I feel like getting curious is just giving yourself that opportunity to ask a question. Is that right?
Yes.
Would you
Yep.
agree with
That's
that?
exactly it. Yes.
Right? Because that's when I think about it at a kid level, right? What's this? Are we there yet? That is almost the vehicle, or how it comes out and how you see it is in the form of a question, but it's how to activate that. If you are not curious, then what is the opposite? Because sometimes I feel like a good way to test if you are leveraging that curiosity muscle is if you're doing it, you're not doing this other thing. So what is the opposite of curiosity in your experience?
Yeah, there are few things that are on the other end of the spectrum. So if you think about curiosity, curiosity is all about openness, it's all about possibilities. It's all about the what if, I wonder, let's try. And the opposite of that, on one end, is inertia. Like as in, always done it this way. There's only one way. It's that sort of fixed mindset. And then on the super extreme of that, I like to think of is anxiety. You know, the oh my gosh, I'm fearing for the worst, and and I'm accessing like the sort of primal instinct of my brain. And the reason why I say that is that one of the things I learned is that the things that we have access to, the things in our control, is our ability to be curious and our ability to be anxious. And they both help us, like as in sort of thinking about stuff, but it's in a different sort of way. The anxiety is, again, we're sort of daydreaming, brainstorming, thinking, but it's usually, you know, in a state where we are in a survival mode. And the things that we tend to rely on are the things that we think that we know, or things that we've done before. So, for example, like when you're anxious about, an upcoming chance encounter, you think of like potentially all the things that can go wrong. And what your body's trying to tell you is like, oh, you need to prepare for this. But you're doing from a part of your body that is restrictive, and it's not, in my opinion, a very positive state. But again, your body's just trying to keep you alive. So when you do the opposite of that, what you also have control over is curiosity and wondering. That brings you back to the prefrontal cortex. It brings that back online. That's the creative centers of the brain that allows you to think of new possibilities. Because again, think about like when you're anxious, a lot of times you're thinking about, well, I'm anxious because it went this way the last time and it's probably going to go this way again. And I'm scared of what's going to happen. Whereas if you're curious of like, well, is that is that completely true? Are there any other possibilities? And I do this to sort of, especially with my kids, my oldest specifically, he has a tendency to, to think like, oh, dad, like he's in martial arts right now, and it's a bit challenging because he's been leveling up. He's a camouflage belt right now, and he just tested for his senior camouflage belt, and it was a bit challenging for him, and he was a little discouraged, and thinking about like, oh, I don't know if I could do this, I don't think I could do this. And then I was just asking him questions like, well, what if you could? What else would happen? And again, trying to access that curiosity, it really opens up possibilities.
Yeah. And I feel like, so when you talk about it like that, in terms of the anxiety and having that constricting or restrictive mindset, the doors are not as open, right? You are in that protective fight or flight mode. Whereas if you're allowed to access curiosity, I don't know, there's just a lot more calm when you access
There
it
is,
from that
yes.
way, because you're not trying to decide on something, or you're not trying to come up with an answer yet, but you're really looking at the possibilities. And so there's a little bit less judgment there.
Yeah, we go from I need to know this to, well, what can I try?
So I want to spend some time thinking about how curiosity shows up in real life examples, right? Because we can talk through the strategies, but I feel like for those of our people out there who love I need a story to kind of cement this idea. Is there ever a time, Gary, where curiosity helped pull you out of that difficult spot, like a specific example?
Yeah. So right now, one of the many things I'm working on is more of a sort of a health journey of just being more overall healthy, being more physically fit. My sort of why is I have younger kids and they require a lot of energy, and I want to be that father that is there for them and have the energy to keep up with them and do all the things. One of the things I've been doing lately is just getting back into running. I'm not necessarily a fan of it, but I do understand that it's very effective at a whole bunch of things. Before my oldest was born, I had run multiple half marathons. And so, not having done that in 8 years, naturally you get atrophy. And so, I'm getting back into it. And there's frustration and resentment of like, man, I used to be more in shape. And the training that I did back then worked. Why isn't it now? I wasn't getting the results that I got back, when I had trained in the past. And so the curiosity aspect sort of kicked in. And then I started asking myself, questions like, I wonder what happened if I shifted things, or how can I shift my training to be more enjoyable? Or, what do I need to do to get unstuck? Asking questions like that. And like I said, it changes our perception, our mindset, and it brings new ideas because when you ask yourself a question, you can't help but to answer it. And so that it just becomes a natural reframe. And some of the things that I as a result of that shifted is, all right, well, what if, because I'm not necessarily training for a half marathon, I'm just trying to get more in shape. Well, what if I, you know, took the pressure off myself to have to hit certain milestones? What if I changed up my route, to be something that is a little bit more interesting, enjoyable? And now I have things that I can try, and not sure if they all will work, but at least it's better than the sort of all or nothing thinking that I had before. My sort of takeaway with that is that getting into the state of curiosity, it allows us to take a step, any step, instead of being trapped in the overthinking and the overwhelm and the sort of spiraling and head turning and not going anywhere.
Yeah, I love that. And I think too, a lot of people have a hesitation to just try something because they feel like they need to commit to it off the bat once they decide. Whereas you can say, hey, let's just experiment for a day or a week or a month or a year, and then make a decision after that. You know, I know that I mentioned this in my very first episode about the whole curious question of, you know, Why was my book not making the progress that I wanted it to be? You were in that room asking me, how do you make it more fun? You knew that that was one of my values. So, not only do you need to ask yourself curious questions, but if you have other people who are there to support you, who maybe know just enough to ask you the right questions, that can also be a tool. It doesn't always have to come from you, because sometimes when you're in that state of anxiety, I think, Gary, right, where we can't even think to ask the questions. So we have to focus on the other tools that we need to get us out of anxiety so that we can have this mindset of curiosity in the first place. So you do workshops for organizations, companies, teams, all across the country and globe. And because you've made your life's work about giving people the opportunity to play more, practice curiosity, and all of these other amazing mindset tools. How do you help others practice curiosity, right? Because it's one thing to be like, here are the steps on how to do it, but how do you actually get people to put this into practice so that they can feel what it's like to put their curiosity hat on?
To put a finer point on that, I do work with individuals and teams, and I use curiosity, playfulness as a vehicle to help teams transform so that they can collaborate better with each other, so that they can be better communicators. And at the end of the day, just improve overall work and life satisfaction. And so to your other point about like, how does this take place? Because you're absolutely right. It's one thing to talk about the theory of this and hypothetically like, oh, what would this look like? And it's another thing to actually do an activity that is going to allow you to experience it in a low stakes environment, and then have your brain get uber curious about this and start ping ponging all over the place and start seeing all the possibilities. And that's what I love about the work that I do, because it infiltrates everything. And then you immediately start seeing how it can affect other areas of your life. So I was working with this professional sports team, it's the sales department. And one of the activities that we did was highlighting how we can't multitask, because especially a lot of type A professionals that are high achievers, they want to do as much as they can, and they find themselves multitasking and trying to juggle so many things. And the point is to showcase that you may be quote unquote multitasking. However, are you being effective? And is it causing unnecessary stress? So that's the whole point of the activity. But the cool thing about playing games is that you go into it willingly, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna give it a try. It's a game. What's going to happen? Low stakes. And so in this activity, uh, the person that is the focus of the activity, they have one objective, which is to listen to the person in their group tell a true story, and then after 45 seconds, be able to tell as much detail as possible about what they heard. And if they missed any little details, boom, they failed. Simultaneously, while that's happening, the other people in the group are asking things of the person in the middle. Everything from spelling to fill in the blank to math. And they have to answer those while trying to listen to the story. And it gets chaotic. I have photos of people while that's happening. They look like deer in the headlights. Their eyes are wide. They're like not able to comprehend what's going on. And if you do the game right, you're going to fail, because the brain has, you don't truly multitask. It's called, switching. And so I've done this with hundreds of teams. And in this one particular example, we're doing the debrief. So we're talking about, how successful were you? Most people are like, no, it wasn't. What are we learning? And more importantly, how can you relate this to your day to day, and what can we take away from this? And so we have this executive that is literally almost in tears. And they're sharing how this is a representation of what their life is like right now. And they thought that was their job as a leader, to be that sort of traffic guard. And they set up an environment where their team had to run everything through them. And as a result, they're not able to get any of their work done. And they feel like they're micromanaging their team. And so I acknowledge them for being very vulnerable and sharing this again amongst their peers and colleagues. And then something cool happened is, we called a timeout, and the team just sort of powwowed and like, all right, what can we do to take some stuff off your plate? And that happened in a game. That was a game that, again, people willingly went into, but it simulated real life, and it allowed someone to see a different possibility. Because again, prior to that game, they thought that was just par for the course. That's what you're supposed to do as a leader. That they were doing their job, and they were miserable doing it. And then they realized through that game that no, it doesn't have to be that way. And so that's the cool thing about these activities, is that through the experience in a low stakes environment, it allows you a chance to see something else. Because I have this belief, how you play anything is how you play everything.
So I'm wondering if, let's say somebody just wants to, on a whim, say, I want to be more curious and I want to ask myself some curious questions. Do you have any go to curiosity questions that you ask yourself when you're feeling stuck or you're in need of looking for other possibilities?
Yes, I do. Some of the things I love to ask myself is, what else could be true? Or another one is, what am I not seeing yet? What's surprising me? And take some time to journal that, write that down. Again, you know, there's no expectations on, it needing to be perfect, but just start to like wonder.
I feel like, too, when you're using a mindset tool to help you accomplish things, because I think even just by being friends with you for this long, I don't ever I never saw myself as a creative. You knew that from early on in our days. I didn't see myself as a creative person. I'm very methodical, step by step, but just being around you has allowed me to tap into that curiosity a little bit more. And I think training that mindset by even just creating a daily practice where you're asking these types of questions or just even being open can be the big game changer, right? It doesn't need to be, nope, you need to just start being curious now, but slowly flexing that muscle, right? These mindset tools are just like going into the gym. It's just really mental training, mental fitness. And so this is just one of many tools that will be highlighted on this podcast, but also to give yourself a thought, because maybe you're somebody who is working your 9 to 5 job, you know what you need to do when you go to work. But for people who have to do constant problem solving at work, need to be more creative, right, Gary? Is there other other areas where in people's work curiosity could be really powerful?
Also, if you're a leader, what it can do is it can build connection and safety. Oftentimes, as leaders, we feel like we need to know everything, and that we need to show that to our team. However, when you come from a curious standpoint, you're lowering the stakes across the board, but it's building a connection. When you say, "Oh, tell me more about that." Coming from that standpoint, it creates an environment where people feel like they can be curious, and that they don't have to have the right answers. And that is what's necessary for innovation, because there's a lot of unknowns. And when you have a team that always feel like they need to be right, they're going to play it safe. And then the other thing is that when you get in this curious mindset, it is an energy boost, because curiosity, what it does, it sparks dopamine. And dopamine is that neurochemical in our brain that helps us be more creative. It lowers our blood pressure, so it turns off the cortisol and adrenaline, and it puts us into the parasympathetic nervous system, so the rest and digest. So there's a lot of other benefits as well.
Has there ever been anything that I have asked you over the years that that was a curious question that maybe changed the trajectory of how you did things?
So one of the things that we do in the Accountability Success Circle, the ASC, is we have a thing called Goal 30. And it's all about, really, it's like a boot camp on achieving goals. And one of the things that I did for the first time last year was during the summer, it was called Goal 30 Play Life. And I brought a more playful aspect of it. And it's just more of experimenting with, how can we use play as, as a vehicle for that. And so it was a lot of fun, a lot of really good feedback. And April was curious, is there a possibility to make it, to take the Goal 30 Play Life framework and make it a little bit more um, like tied to achieving a specific goal through the lens of play instead of just being more playful in general? And so that curiosity got me thinking, and it helped me revise Goal 30 Play Life. And we ran that over the summer, and it was a lot of fun. Completely different. And again, it wouldn't have happened had April not asked that curious question.
Love that. And it was super fun. And I can see that as we continue to refine it more and more, just to
Yeah.
keep doing that again. All right. You want to hear mine? One of the things that you opened my eyes to, and I feel like I try to open other people's eyes to now, is improv. That was, if I go back to what we were talking about in one of those initial Skype calls, that was before the Zoom days, I think. So we were talking about how I was exploring the idea of doing public speaking and how I spent weeks and hours trying to put together a presentation and it just wasn't fun. And I went to a Toastmasters meeting and it was kind of blah. And Gary was like, if you have never even thought about this, one thing that's helped me is improv. It really helps me get out of my mind, and it's a totally different way of learning public speaking skills, but you learn essentially the same things in a more fun environment. And as soon as you said fun, I was like, what? Tell me more. And that put me on a 18-month journey through an improv program here in Chicago. I made so many amazing friends through that. And I think the way that I speak, while it might not be polished for a TED stage, and if I really wanted to do that, I would put the work into that. But I don't want to because I decided to go another route. But I think it really changed the way that I communicate. And there is definitely an obsessive nature to the way that I do work. I always want everything to be perfect. And it allowed me to tackle perfectionism in a way that I was not expecting. And I wouldn't say that I would go into improv as a career, but I have learned that it has changed the way that I look at things because I'm not scared anymore. If I make mistakes, I am happy to be like, whoop, I made a mistake. But at the same time, I can also tap into that curiosity that much more. And that is tie this whole thing in a bow, because you almost have to get curious as you're listening to people and having to come up with something new to say each time. And so I thank you for that curiosity
Oh,
training, even though the money didn't go straight to you. You get
oh,
it
good.
in my friendship.
Yes.
So,
Ah, I love that. And
oh,
yeah, it's so funny to see you now post improv, and yeah, you are like more open and more flexible and stuff like that. Not saying that pre improv that you were like completely uptight about stuff. Like, no, like it's not the, it's not the case. But yeah, I totally forgot about that journey because it's just like who you are now. So
yeah. And it
yay.
was just so debilitating the amount of time that I would take to put together a presentation. And now it's like, oh, we're doing a launch tomorrow. I haven't even thought about it, but we've done it before. But it's that being able to wing it has been a game changer for me, because I am very much like, nope, this needs to be done this way. And I still do that. But I think that the energy that I take to put out the work that I do is so much less now. So there's our little plug for improv. So, all right. Are you ready to play a little game? Gary?
I am, April. Let's bring it. Yes.
Okay, so as we were planning this episode, Gary and I love to play games. If you have not figured that out in the last however long we've been talking. And I wanted to end our amazing conversation with a curious questions game. So I tasked Gary to source questions to ask me, and I don't know what those questions are. And I did the same, sourced a few questions, and we're just going to ask some. And we don't know what we're going to ask. So if you're watching the video version of this, you get to see all of our facial expressions in all its
Right.
glory. This is testing our improv skills and just to see if we can learn a little bit more about each other. So, Gary, would you like to go first?
All right. How does your Filipino heritage connect with your current play? Where does it show up? And are there any parts of your Pinoy ancestry that prevent you from playing more?
Ooh. So, I am not on social media that much, but when you scroll through my Instagram feed, it's one of five things. But one of those five things is Filipino jokes, Filipino accents, just Filipino comedy. And so I feel like that shows up by just ingesting the comedy and having that connection to my heritage. But I think the way that it shows up when I dish it out is a lot of times you'll hear me say things with my Filipino accent. And when I was a kid, I had a Filipino accent because I was born there. And so I'll say stuff like, even just yes, I almost flipped into it there for a second.
No,
Uh,
I know.
so yesterday, I was in the car with Ryan and I said, "Oh, okay, so we're going to get a haircut on Friday and then you'll look handsome. Handsome, handsome." Well, it's like HANSAM. Handsome. And I'll say things like that or um like close the lights, like these are things that I would hear, and I'm not making fun of my parents at all. It's just the things that I was ingesting as a kid, and so it's just fun to say it and it makes me laugh. And so being able to say things in with a Filipino accent makes me giggle all the time. So I would say that that's where play shows up. Now, the second part of the question is, where does it stop me from playing? I think in our um, in our culture, there's a very serious focus on education and school. And so as I was growing up, it was, what grades are you getting? How hard are you studying? What job are you going to get out of college? And that has always, kept me in a lane to achieve, which is great. Um, I don't regret that I was raised that way because I think that that's part of the reason why I am as successful as I am now. But I also feel like it has stunted my ability to be curious because I was kind of already put in a path. And, it's only now later in life where I'm like, oh, at some point I wanted to be a journalist. Why did I never do that? And now I'm just playing with those things. And so that rigidity helped me get to where I needed to be, but it really stunted my ability to be more creative and more curious. So, yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. What do you got for me?
All right. So, if there was a Broadway show called Gary Ware the Musical, what would the show stopping number in Gary Ware the Musical be called?
The show stopping number. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm trying to think.
Talk through your
Uh,
thoughts.
yeah. So I'm trying to think. Like, so what I love musicals myself, and the some of the things that come up to me is like in Hamilton, like My Shot. That is like a big one, or like the opening number. are in, like Rent, 525,600 minutes. So it's just something that is sort of setting the stage for that. The first thing that came to mind is like, so it has to do with something of That's What She Said, just because that was the first thing that was in my head, and I was like, why is that even showing up right now? Be serious, Gary. Um, and I think th- along those lines, maybe something along the line of, can you even take a joke? Something about that, because that is big with me. Is like, if you can't, it's hard to be serious, but you shouldn't take yourself too seriously, and that is like the ethos of everything that has to do with me.
I love that. I love that. So the title of the song would be That's What She Said, but it was about um, her being too serious and how to not take things too seriously. I'm gonna write that song with AI. You just wait. I love it.
Oh, I love that. Oh my god, what an awesome gift.
All
Yeah.
right. Yay for our curious questions game. Woohoo.
Yay.
Well, Gary, thank you so much for being my first guest on the Accomplishment Project podcast. I just wanted to make sure that before we go, that we have an opportunity to share everything that you're up to and different ways that people can follow you if they want to know more. I have your book behind me, which is Playful Rebellion in the nice little orange. So you can get that anywhere. Amazon, all the booksellers. His website is breakthroughplay.com. So check him out if you are working for an organization that is interested in hiring him either for a keynote or some workshops. You can see Gary on LinkedIn and Instagram at Gary Ware. And of course, you can come hang out with the both of us in the Accountability Success Circle, accountabilitysuccesscircle.com. Is there anything else that you want to share, Gary?
Since you did such an amazing job of being a hype person and hyping me up, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you, April.
Oh,
Thank you, April, for holding this space to highlight and talk about unconventional ways of achieving and sharing your stories and being very vulnerable and being an amazing host. And I know that the people that are listening and watching are getting so many amazing takeaways, and they will continue to do so. And my best wishes to you. And I cannot wait till we come back again and do a reunion show and talk about how awesome it's been since the launch of this podcast.
yes. And Gary will be on future episodes. I will just try not to capitalize on all of his time because we all have work to do. So you'll see him back soon. And I have one last question before we wrap up. As we're talking about accomplishment, what's the one curious question you think we need to ask ourselves as we're preparing to accomplish something meaningful?
Wow. Talk about like, since we are trying to accomplish things and since we are trying to do it our way, we can often get drawn into things and we forget to check in. So, a good question that we should be asking ourselves: is the juice worth the squeeze? And if it is, keep at it. And if it's not, what shifts can you make?
What other curious questions can you ask? I love that. Thank you so much for being here, Gary. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Bye.